Kids, kids, kids. Bless them, they're wonderful. And there are more of them by the day. Tomorrow at this time, there will be 12,000 more infant Americans. The day after, 24,000, then 36,000, and so on and on. Of course, with more kids come more needs. Need for more clothes, more food, more cars, more homes. And the need for more of all the things that will contribute to their education. The education that will prepare them for the world they will one day have to run. The need to continue giving good education to the swiftly increasing enrollments came to the people of Anaheim, California, earlier than most. A few years ago, Anaheim was a semi-rural agricultural community. Then the Santa Ana Freeway was put through. Suddenly, it was discovered that freeways not only carried traffic, they generate it. Anaheim faced then the same problem that thousands of communities are facing now. Anaheim met its problem with the help of instructional television. And because of this pioneering work, many school groups have visited the system. Dr. Robert Shanks, Anaheim school superintendent, answers them like this.
In such an expanded, rapidly growing area, and in a school district that had to begin to take care of so many thousands of additional pupils in such a relatively short time, television offered for us an opportunity to improve the quality of education in a way that could be done within our financial structure, within what the community felt that they could afford for good schools. Whether Johnny goes to Sunkist School or clear out here in the other end of town at Madison School, essentially he's receiving the same kind of instruction.
This small, neat building houses Anaheim studios. The stages are simple and small, but with 4 of them, plus a film chain and eventually a videotape machine, some lessons can be rehearsed while others are going out simultaneously over the cables into the school classrooms around the district.
Ready to cue into 5. Take 5, cue in. Ready 1 on the demonstration.
Fellas down here, the time to do your talking is when Bill walks behind you.
Betty, have Lou move his Ferris wheel to his left, please. A little bit.
All right.
Good. Lou, when do you want the close-up on the Ferris wheel?
Let's see. When I move it over next to this test tube.
Stand by in the studio. 30 seconds to air time. Milt, would you check that on number 2 lens, please?
This is a lesson in 5th grade science.
That's fine.
In a few seconds, this one teacher will be going out along the cable to teach not just 30 youngsters in one class, but 500 or 1,000 pupils in a score or more classrooms.
That explosion was a release of energy. Energy that might possibly be used to operate or run modern machinery. Now, we've learned of other types of energy, energy such as wind, muscle power, or falling water. In this test tube, I have placed match heads. And when these match heads burn, they will release the energy of heat. Now, at the end of this test tube, I will place this cork. Now, when I cause these matches to burn by using this outside source of heat, the Bunsen burner, what do you suppose will happen to this cork in the test tube as this heat energy is released? Well, let's watch and see.
Every learner in the room has a front row seat, sometimes better. Much better.
Heat energy, you see, was enough to even...
Now, I want to emphasize that all of these telecasts are tied in very closely with related classroom teaching.
Our ancestors came particularly from the nations of Europe, for these were the areas that best responded to the call of liberty and of opportunity.
It's a team effort in which the classroom teacher and the studio teacher combine their efforts in a carefully pre-planned program to try to bring to these boys and girls a really broader learning opportunities. Do the children learn as much when you introduce television in the classroom? Do they learn less, or do they do better? Well, as we look back over the 3 years, we feel that in many, many ways, the results have brought more learning and better learning to our boys and girls, and we're very sure that we're teaching a great many more things and accomplishing things with boys and girls that we didn't before, particularly in the areas where televised instruction is a part of the curriculum.
This widely circulated booklet from the Ford Foundation's Fund for the Advancement of Education sums up the problem many communities are facing.
By 1965, there will be needed 350,000 more teachers than there are now. There are no signs anywhere that such a needed increase will be met by the total of all present or planned training programs throughout the nation. The schools need not only more teachers, but also a high level of teaching. There are not only many more persons to be educated, but there is so much more that must be learned. And much that must be learned is more complicated and difficult to learn than before.
The need is real. Among many solutions now under experiment is television. It may prove broadly useful in the teaching process, it may not. Only time and trial will tell, but it would seem to be worth looking into. The commercial television stations have made many contributions, such as their far-flung news reports, documentaries, and the well-remembered early morning broadcasts of Continental Classroom. The possibilities of television in education become even more evident over in a field of broadcasting which many people know little about, the so-called ETV stations, educational television stations, non-commercial and non-profit. Some of these stations are owned by colleges and universities, as here at Michigan State. Others are owned by public school systems, as in Denver. Many are run by non-profit community groups, as with Boston's famed WGBH, and sometimes are connected in regional networks. But all are dedicated to arousing curiosity, stimulating the imagination, interesting, informing, and inspiring Americans of all ages. Some truly fine cultural and enrichment programming comes to them from another Ford-aided project, National Educational Television and Radio Center.
Believe it or not, this is also a horn. Actually a sort of trumpet called a lituus, used for signaling in the Roman army. Can you imagine the sound of mess call or reveille on that?
I think I've convinced you that he's active.
He's active, all right, no question.
I'd like to point out to you how fat he is.
Yes, yes.
You see,
yes.
This fat is accumulated so that the animal, when he goes into hibernation, will have some energy.
But in school hours, ETV stations are usually broadcasting instructional television, often called ITV, day-to-day systematic direct instruction as part of the school's curriculum. In essence, it is regular teaching of the regular classroom subjects, but televised from a central point and available to all schools within reach of the station's line-of-sight signal. The so-called flying classroom, the flying ETV station of the Midwest program of airborne television instruction, is even a sort of one-station network in terms of the area it reaches. The planes fly at 4 miles altitude, breaking out of the earthbound line-of-sight limitation to achieve a signal range of up to 200 miles to a thickly settled area that includes 13,000 schools and colleges with some 5 million students. Here there are 2 videotape machines broadcasting at the same time. This is an improvement over the conventional ground station, which of course broadcasts only 1 lesson at a time. In most school systems, 12 grades are all going on at once, so that while, for example, the 6th grade is studying geography via TV, the other 11 grades must be off the air. But the airborne has been allotted 2 channels, and a properly equipped school in its area can take advantage of the television courses in 2 classes at the same time. In other parts of the country, we can see expanded versions of multiple-channel television, so-called closed circuit, transmitting the signals not over the public air, but via coaxial cable and microwave, much as the telephone companies transmit network TV shows to the stations around the country. A couple of hours' drive northwest of the nation's capital lies Washington County, Maryland. Historic country, long settled, prosperous, and conservative on the whole, putting a high value on the quality of its schools. Hagerstown is the county seat and the place where the present county-wide system began, and where we will hear some interesting views on teacher participation in an ITV program from Dr. William Brish, Superintendent of Washington County Schools.
I think that what's happened here has been definitely the result of the fact that rather than plan out what we were going to do and then hand it out to the teachers, we brought the teachers in and had them plan with us. The teachers had a specific hand in the reaching of decisions.
The studio teachers have their offices in this building, adjacent to both the support departments and the stages. This is Jane Wood, who until recently was teaching music conventionally in Hagerstown school classrooms. And this is a typical workshop session where the classroom teachers from around the county come into the ETV Center to meet with Miss Wood and the other studio teachers, to make known their feelings, suggest improvements, and actively participate in the forward planning. Here is the studio side of the teaching team, getting ready to put a carefully prepared music lesson on the cable to 40-odd classes of second graders all over this widespread county.
Boys and girls, let us sing our song.
The classroom members of the teaching team are getting their children prepared.
Some walkers? Good.
Run, 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 run. Walk, walk, walk. It's fun to work in our garden. It's fun to weed and hoe. It's fun to plant the tiny seeds. It's fun to watch them grow.
Good morning, boys and girls. Do you know the name of the song that I was just playing? Well, if you do, tell your teacher right now.
It's fun to work in our garden.
Yes, it's fun to work in our garden. Well, let's sing it together right now. And remember that spot where the plants are growing and the notes go up? Our voices to do that, too.
It's fun to watch them grow.
Let's try that together, just that one little spot.
It's fun to watch them grow.
Good, now let's try it from the beginning.
It's fun to work in our garden. It's fun to weed and hoe. It's fun to plant the tiny seeds. It's fun to watch them grow.
Have you been thinking about ways that you could work in a garden? Tell your teacher some things that either this song suggests or that you have thought of.
Barbara?
Well, you can plant the seeds.
Gregory?
You can hoe and weed and plant the tiny seeds.
Sure, hoeing and planting and weeding, and maybe you thought of some other things. Well, right now we're going to sing the song again, and you can pretend to do one of those things as we're singing it. So decide right now what you're going to do. Do you know? Okay, let's stand very quietly beside our seats. And use your very best singing voices.
It's fun.
We see the same teamwork in more advanced grades.
Baissez la main. Qu'est-ce que c'est?
In 5th grade French.
Très bien, c'est une orange. Voilà. Les pommes, les pêches et une orange. Encore quelque chose. Qu'est-ce que c'est? Qui c'est? Tell your teacher.
And?
C'est une banane.
Répétez toute la classe.
C'est une banane.
Encore.
C'est une banane.
Bill, how about the public? Have you found their interest to be primarily in the cost of the television facility, or are they interested primarily in the quality of education?
Well, I think they were interested primarily in the quality of education, and we felt we had quite a responsibility here. Pupils in school are not guinea pigs. We just can't experiment with them and then, having failed, say, oh, so sorry. We didn't do it in that way. We kept very careful achievement results of what was happening and worked these things into our project. The capital outlay cost and the value of our entire equipment setup, which involves 6 studios and cameras and tape recorder, and some 800 television sets in the schools, is less than $300,000. So you're talking about a capital investment of about the size of putting an auditorium on a school or a gymnasium.
Well, what does instructional television cost to operate? Dr. Shanks?
These figures indicate the cost per pupil for our district, the cost per pupil for elementary districts in Orange County as a whole, and the cost per pupil in our state as a whole. You can readily see that our cost per pupil is considerably less than the county average and quite a great deal less than the state average for elementary districts.
With the American's traditional commitment to keep local control over his schools, not too often spreading even over a county, as here in Maryland, educators do not expect to see many statewide educational systems with uniform curriculums. Though there may be special situations, such as areas where the population is sparse and the schools scattered, as in parts of the West, or in areas where a great deal of educational ground is being rapidly regained. Of one such situation, Time magazine says,
"To catch up, South Carolina is pouring money into its schools. 50% of every tax dollar now goes to education, and 80% of all pupils are in new classrooms. But as one official puts it, the schools are hollow. Supported by the nation's third lowest per capita income, they can pay classroom teachers an average of only $3,760 a year, against the U.S. average of $5,527. As a result, South Carolina is critically short of able teachers. The solution is to put the state's best teachers on TV and beam their skills at every classroom. Closed-circuit TV can eventually cover the state at a yearly cost of only $14 per pupil. At the Educational Television Commission's well-appointed studios in Columbia, a 28-person professional staff is busily taping half-hour lessons in algebra, geometry, physical science, French, and South Carolina history. The actors are full-time teachers who spend...
In her office, surrounded by her reference material, the studio teacher has time to prepare the lesson she will deliver perhaps 2 weeks from now. The lesson guides are mimeographed and supplied to the classroom teachers in advance. To convert the lesson outline into a TV program, the studio teacher is supported by production specialists, including an art department which takes her ideas and converts them to visuals, the pictures that will be worth 1,000 words. The skilled television director works out the camera handling. When will the visuals come in? At what point will the teacher want close-ups and so on?
Ready? Take 3.
Today we are beginning a study of quadratic equations in 2 variables. The general form of this...
Where Anaheim and Washington County put their lessons directly on the cable, live, South Carolina records the lessons on videotape, usually some days ahead of the actual transmission. For the reason, here is Lynn Kalmbach, another pioneer in instructional television and general manager of the South Carolina project.
We needed a technological way of multiplying good teaching, and we felt that if we put the maximum of production effort into a program, that it was too valuable to be erased. We wanted to be able to have the teacher teach several times during the day, which was impossible if it was live, and we wanted to repeat year after year.
So another lesson goes into the library. Of course, as Dr. Brish started to say when we met him back in Hagerstown,
The thing is not how the image gets on the television set, it's the planning that goes into what is done with television. But there are two ways at present that are being used to accomplish this. Now, in our community, we have no open circuit television station.
open circuit is simply one way of saying broadcasting station. And closed circuit is the term for a private system where the TV programs, instead of going out on the public air, go out over the closed system's own coaxial cable and microwave links, to be received only by TV sets that can be plugged into the private line. And here in Columbia, Lynn Kalmbach explains the South Carolina problem.
The needs of South Carolina were such that we had shortages in many, many fields, and we felt that we should be able to provide instructional material to meet these shortages. In calculating the number of subjects that we would have to transmit at one time, we found that it might be necessary to transmit as many as 6 lessons simultaneously. In order to do this, we needed many channels. By going closed circuit, we could transmit 6 lessons simultaneously and in that way meet the needs of the schools better.
All right, class, let's settle down now. This morning, we are going to begin a new unit of work which involves the solution of a system of equations. We will solve these both graphically and from the algebraic point of view. This means that we need graph paper, and I hope we all brought some with us today. We need to understand what we mean by a right circular cone. The TV class will use the right circular cone this morning.
The South Carolina Educational Television Center presents Algebra 2 with Mrs. Rhoda Lugenbiel.
Today we want to begin a study of a quadratic equation in two variables.
There's an interesting side effect that you've probably already noticed in these TV classrooms.
To 0.
Wanda Mitchell, Evanston, Illinois teacher of long experience with television, says,
I can watch the learning process with these students. When I'm teaching them, I'm so busy with what I'm trying to get across that I don't have time to watch the learning process and see which are getting it and which aren't, except in a general way. While she is teaching the lesson, I can watch Susie. For 6 days, I can watch Susie and see what on earth keeps Susie from getting this. What do I learn from her?
If we pass a straight line through the vertex and the center of the base, this straight line is called the axis of the cone. Now, if the axis of the cone is perpendicular to the plane of the base...
Throughout the state, hundreds of teachers, all with the same carefully prepared lesson, have the opportunity to watch their pupils and observe the learning process.
The parabola, the hyperbola. Now, let's look at these in a little greater detail. I have here a sketch of the cone.
Lynn Kalmbach is utterly sincere when he calls this
the most powerful weapon to combat ignorance that had come about in our society since the invention of the printing press in 1438.
Be able to classify specific equations as one of these 4 conic sections is definitely related to our study of the quadratic equation in 2 variables. So I want you to be familiar with the general form of this equation, and then we will study the specific cases.
All right, let's quiet down now. Let's come to order. Let's have some order over there. Now let's open our books to page 349. We shall do examples 2 and 3. Graph these by making tables of values.
Here's another area that's going to need help, maybe needs it right now, with so many more high school graduates going on to college. Michigan State University plays TV across the board. Let's put our question to Dr. James Tintera, one of the leading research men in the field of education.
In colleges and universities, television is being used and experimented with under a vast variety of methods and systems of learning, where large groups of students, more than could be put together under any such learning system or any learning system we have available, all observe a given lesson with the very best instructor possible within that college or within that university context, all at the same time.
A single popular course today may enroll 1,000 or more students, spread around several halls and classrooms. But with TV, every one of these students gets his instruction from the ranking professor.
You'll see how it works by arranging them vertically, so to speak. On the first page of our worksheet, you'll notice that we have only balance sheet items. At the top of the page, we have our assets made up of cash, accounts receivable, and so forth. And we come on down so as to pick up our liabilities and our stockholders' equity.
California's San Jose state relies to an unusual degree on some unique capabilities of the television medium. Mrs. Terry Martin.
Well, in 1960, as a matter of fact, we found a need for the image magnification camera. It is a unit that can be put on a projection stand, for instance, rolled into a classroom.
The frontal and the mandible are single bones, the remaining bones being paired. Something of interest is this alveolar process which we find on the maxilla and the mandible. This process houses the teeth, which are actually projections of bone adapted for the purpose of chewing.
Dr. Richter?
Watch the television set.
You mean one like this?
Yeah, that's it.
This is called a foramen, and it's for the purpose of allowing passageway for blood vessels and nerves. These structures provide nerve supply and circulation for the teeth, the skin.
Well, that's the tour. There are other places we would like to visit, many, many of them. But at least we've seen a cross-section. All different as the communities are different, but all with one thing in common. All are peering over the edge of tomorrow. There are many avenues to the answers. One of them may be television, instructional television.
I'll place a cork to seal off the opening. Now, what do you suppose is going to happen with this cork as I heat the water?
Our ancestors came from many different nations.
It's fun to wind the tiny seeds. It's fun to watch them grow.
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
And?
Now, the hyperbola is an open curve. This is only one of its two branches.
We said that America was like a sleeping giant waiting for